Welcome back, dear listeners, to a brand new season of the PMO Community podcast series, where we navigate the challenges and triumphs at the intersection of technology, changes, and human ambition. Are you ready to confront the hidden risks AI might be weaving into your projects? What if the very tools designed to enhance our productivity are also quietly shaping our professional obsolescence? This season, we are kicking things off with a special guest who stands at the forefront of technological evolution and leadership. Meet Gerard Pietrykiewicz, a mastermind in integrating software, AI, and security projects. With over 15 years at the helm of multi-million-dollar initiatives, Gerard's insights spearhead the transformation in web app development and the innovative incorporation of generative AI into revolutionary solutions. Beyond the digital battleground, Gerard is a certified executive coach and a distinguished Toastmaster, where, by the way, we met in person 10 years ago, sculpting the leaders of tomorrow with his extensive knowledge in communication and leadership development. And that's not all. When he's not steering project to success or mentoring the elite, you'll likely find him at the gym or enjoying his passion for cars as a proud member of the Porsche Club of America. So, take a delicious drink and prepare for a season of discovering how the convergence of technology and strategic leadership can navigate the complex roadmap to success in our fast-evolving world. Hi, Gerard. I'm always
Hello.
happy to talk to you about AI. Hi.
I'm always happy to talk about AI too. Thank you
So,
for having me on your podcast.
thank you for joining. So, I am eager to ask you my first question about ChatGPT and the other tools, because you know that AI is evolving rapidly, and every week I see new updates from ChatGPT, and I don't really follow the other tools, so I anticipate they also deliver many updates every week or maybe every day. So, from your perspective as a project manager, program manager, and the AI enthusiast, what are some AI tools that project managers should pay attention to?
Hmm. I think ChatGPT is definitely the most important one, closely followed by Copilot and Google Gemini. Market right now is full of hype around DeepSeek and all
Mhm.
the other models that are coming almost daily now, and you see the news about it all. But in your day-to-day work, where your corporation actually allows you to use those tools on day-to-day basis and actually, post internal documents into those tools, all of those experimental models are not real products that a project manager can actually use for productive work in their day-to-day job, right? So I think this is a distinction that one needs to make. What can I use versus what is out there? And different corporations now have different policies around it. Um, I see that most of the corporations that are based on Microsoft tools, they go with Copilot because of the close integration, and companies that are based on Google tools, like Gmail for work, they use a little bit more of Gemini, and ChatGPT is a little bit all over the place. But I would say those are the three big ones. Obviously, there are more specialized tools for content generation. So they're like, for tools for graphics designers and, you know, um, content managers. But those are the top three right now.
Yeah, makes sense. And when we were talking before starting this recording, you mentioned to me a few cases that AI was helping you with technical documentation. So could you share it to the audience as well, like how AI can help with creating technical documentation? And if you have any examples, it would be beneficial if you walk us through.
Yeah. So technical documentation tends to be very dry. So it's really hard to sit down and read through, 200 pages of some fairly interesting content, but written in a very dry way. It is very detailed. It is, you know, goes from one point to another very slowly. So by the time you read 50 pages, you don't really remember what was on page one, right? What I like to
That is
do
my
is
case.
exactly, well, but I think that's human, right? And what I like to do is upload that documentation to ChatGPT and
Mhm.
then start building context and kind of have a two-way conversation with ChatGPT where I ask ChatGPT to act as a teacher. I say, summarize this document first. After the summary, I will be asking you to walk me through key learnings in a little bit more detail. Then I will ask it to quiz me to see if I remember anything of this. I will ask it to create summary of individual chapters, right? So it just makes it easier to consume that content,
Mhm.
right? And especially when you have something that it's new to you and you're reading new new content that you don't have any anchor for. If you working in a space that is so foreign to you that even if you read the documentation, yes, you acquired uh, knowledge, but not understanding,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes you've read something and you're like, I know what I've read, but I still don't understand it.
Yeah.
And having ChatGPT walk you through this in smaller steps and then also pull information from internet where you can say, I don't understand this term or this terminology, or I don't understand this. Can you explain this in like a layman language? It
Mhm.
can change the level of abstraction, right? So it can go from high level technical documentation all the way to explaining individual details. But you can also go way up and see, well, what does this word mean? And it can act almost like a Google search where it defines a word for you, right?
Mhm.
So I ask it to be a teacher for me, and this is how I consume that documentation.
I love your answer, Gerard, and because it's exactly my case, because I switched from one domain of knowledge to another, like from electrical engineering, then to IT, then hospitality. So it was
Mhm.
extremely hard and painful for me to learn all of these domains, and especially with the new words and new jargon, which everybody is
Yes,
aware of. And
yes.
then, like, I got an advice from one of the mentors, like, go to the knowledgeable person and ask him or her to explain it to you, like to a 3 years old kid. And guess what? I asked it, but they still kept talking to me like a professional who spent at least 10 years in this domain. And
Hmm.
I regret that I even came and asked them to explain because before I had just one question. And when they finished explaining, I had another 15. But trying, but trying it with ChatGPT, it really explains you like for 3 years old kid, tying the information to the layer of knowledge, like the basic knowledge you already have, right?
Precisely. I was taking some. I'm preparing for a safety exam
Mm-hmm.
in a hobby that I'm doing, and the safety regulations are one of the most boring technical documentations you can read. And the exam has 60 questions. So I
Wow.
uploaded the manuals, the regulations, and then the exam template with the questions, and I ask it to explain every question, reference the documentation, and provide the reason why this answer is the correct one, question after question. So yes, I spend a couple of hours having a conversation with ChatGPT, but I absorbed it much better than just reading it.
Yeah, but
Plus,
it's much better, sorry for interrupting, to have a conversational learning rather than just
mhm,
reading and consuming all of the pages individually.
plus there is also the option now to press this button and it reads it out for you. And I noticed that if I read something by myself and then I have ChatGPT read it back to me and I hear it again, my knowledge retention goes up because I now introduce the same knowledge through two mediums that I consume it through.
Yeah, and I never heard that somebody else ditch these exercises. So thank you for sharing. But Gerard, I have maybe a tricky question to you here, because AI definitely help us with learning the technical dry documentation. But how do you feel like uploading it to like ChatGPT, especially if the companies have this like privacy security settings that you cannot use the documentation like outside of the organization?
So this is very tricky situation for a lot of companies now because you hear about, for instance, DeepSeek, sharing
Hmm.
information outside of its model. Who knows where that information goes,
Hmm.
right? So a lot of the times it's really important to follow the corporate policies because you don't want to get yourself into trouble, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's important to work with your organization to find the balance and the tools. Um, you know, there are open source models like Llama that you can work with your internal IT department to deploy locally, only available within your corporate network, right? So then the information doesn't go outside. Yes, the experience is maybe slightly worse than with ChatGPT, because this is what I meant at the beginning of our conversation. ChatGPT is a functioning product that anyone without any technical knowledge can log in and use.
Hmm.
Like the barrier of entry is very low, right? If we're talking about experimental models deployed on some weird infrastructure that only highly skilled, technical people can understand, like you and I, we have a very little chance of actually using it, right? But if you work within your IT department and they deploy something locally, or they, provide a policy saying you can now use Microsoft Copilot, right? Then you can stay within those tools and use them.
Hmm.
So, but at the same time, I think ChatGPT specifically, and also Copilot as well, over the course of last year, have proven that the information doesn't really escape their ecosystem. Obviously, there are certain, you hear about all sorts
Yeah.
of accidents, but I think organizations are starting to trust those tools more, especially when they see the gain in the productivity, right? So I would advise everyone to just go to your IT department and to your information security officer, whatever their title is, and figure out how can they enable you to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, and we kind of started talking about risks already. So I want to ask another risk question about how can AI assist in risk mitigation by identifying gaps in documentation?
Hmm. It's a little trick that I do from time to time when I upload a report that I receive from someone to ChatGPT. And then I'll go through standard set of prompts, summarize this for me, give me 5 key learnings from this report. Are there any action items listed in the report? Explain those to me.
Hmm.
But you can also ask a negative question, as in, what is missing from that report? ChatGPT and those models were trained on thousands of copies of similar reports of any kind. Actually, it's
Hmm.
staggering how much content they consume to generate those models. So they know that statistically, the report has a certain structure and has certain major chapters, and those chapters have some subsections, and they explain different things. So now ChatGPT can actually look at this report that you uploaded and say, okay, statistically, those three are there, but my model tells me that there should also be another two major chapters, and those are missing. And it's actually an interesting thing because it helps you think and consume that report in a different way. And sometimes we're so busy that we don't ask ourselves questions, what is missing? But ChatGPT can help us uncover that. And then those can be a set of follow-up questions to whoever generated that report to be like, okay, explain this more. Have you taken this into consideration? Is that part of your risk register? You can then have that conversation, right?
Hmm. I love it. And it's kind of like playing the devil advocate. And even
Mhm.
if you do it with humans, for example, you are preparing the report and I will be a devil advocate. Normally, we don't like humans who are questioning something, even though if their like questions are reasonable. But when it comes from the AI, like asking to identify all of the gaps, and then it provides you like the 10 gaps you are having in your report, it kind of like makes me, like to scratch my head sometimes.
Yeah, we're not as defensive about a tool asking those
Yeah.
questions, right? We don't feel um, maybe attacked is a little bit too aggressive word, but we don't feel challenged, right?
Yeah, exactly. I like this word. Like when it comes from a human, we feel more challenged when it just comes from a tool.
Precisely.
And you also mentioned to me that you use AI to help you with time saving, and we all know that we can use AI with email replies, with Excel reports. But you also mentioned the slide decks, which I don't utilize AI for yet. So could you tell us more about this?
Yes. So imagine you're working on some kind of PowerPoint presentation,
Hmm.
and you have to create a bunch of slides to help you convey a message, right? Because this is where we use PowerPoints. Even if we use
Hmm.
PowerPoint as a tool to create a report, there are corporations that have, the slide decks to report status of different things, right?
Hmm.
Even if you do that, um, you still have to prepare all the content that goes inside the PowerPoint itself, right?
Hmm.
So what I tend to do is take all the relevant information, upload it to ChatGPT to create one thread that has all the context necessary for that PowerPoint to exist. And then I describe the audience that is going to receive that presentation, and I ask it to generate the content of individual slides for me to be kind of almost like a starting point for me, right?
Hmm.
So I actually just ask it, generate a list of slides and all the bullet points on each slide and provide an advice on what kind of visual aids will support those slides. And ChatGPT just lists them all out for you, right? And what that what this does is allow me to just get started and like quite literally copy paste from ChatGPT as a starting point. I don't trust ChatGPT 100% because it still hallucinates a little bit from time to time, and some of the generated answers are not necessarily grammatically correct either, although it's not bad. But still, it serves as a initial structure to the presentation, and then I can reword slide after slide and upload the images or the screenshots of certain things or diagrams or whatever I need to do to embellish that presentation. And that saves me the time of sitting down and thinking, what do I want on this slide? What do I want on this slide? I already offloaded that mental burden to ChatGPT, and it
Hmm.
saves me the time in doing that. Second area in which I save myself a lot of time is catching up on Slack messages or MS Team messages, right? As a project manager, we often facilitate a lot of meetings. And when we are in the meeting, the chat doesn't stop. It just goes. And sometimes, especially when you're working with a larger team and a very chatty team, you go back to your chat and there's like 60 messages in a channel that your team were trying to go over a certain problem. And now you have a choice, either to read through all of this, or you kind of assume that your team has it, but you're now starting to miss that context. So either you will miss context or you're going to spend some time. Well, I typically will copy the entire thread from that day into ChatGPT and ask it to summarize it for me and see if there are any action items and who needs to take them.
Hmm.
And that saves me a ton of time reading through this.
Yeah, that is a very useful tip. And you also mentioned the word hallucination, which I kind of like marked in my head, not to forget to ask you about it. So we
Mhm.
all know that AI love hallucinating, but how can project or like portfolio managers verify the accuracy of AI generated content?
Hmm. I think that's probably one of the main challenges that we now have with AI. I think it's very important to remember that this is a tool, right? And even though it's smart, it is intelligent, it
Hmm.
still operates within confines of underlying math and statistics. Because what ChatGPT actually does, it just has a really powerful engine. I think it's called inference engine, where it basically says, okay, this is the most likely word that follows the previous sentence. So in itself, it doesn't really know what it's supposed to be. That's why it's called generative AI. It generates the answers, right? But the
Yeah.
fact that something is most likely, statistically speaking, doesn't necessarily make it true in your context of your task of your organization, right? But what it does, it allows me to offload the thinking and the mental burden of trying to figure out everything by myself.
Mhm.
So I use ChatGPT and Copilot as a soundboard. Like, let's say I want to craft a reply to an email. I'm working with a client. There is some escalation. There is a big problem that we need to solve. Uh, you know, things are not going according to plan, and now I have to reply to this, and I have to be careful how I word it because on one hand, I don't want to cause more trouble. On the other hand, I need to be very accurate in my statement, right? I will still take the entire email thread, put it into ChatGPT, and ask it to generate the email reply. But I use it more as a template, right? So I'll read through that reply, and it gives me the general structure of that reply and things I need to cover. But then I actually type the email myself. I When it comes to email communication, I never copy paste directly from ChatGPT into Outlook because I just don't trust that it will capture it correctly. But it can still spend the time to like think through this for me, and then I can just write the content. So it saves me time, but I cannot just copy paste.
Yeah. And I think you touched a topic of a misconception about AI. Like we know that AI is just a tool to generate the most probable answer. But I know some people, they humanize this tool a little bit more than they supposed to. So I have a bigger question for you. So Gerard, can you tell us what is the biggest misconception project managers have about AI from your perspective?
Well, I cannot talk about my perspective and kind of what I see when I communicate with other people. And there is, I think, general trend to think that AI is just going to replace us all.
Yeah.
Like it can reply to emails, so why you have to? It can generate technical documentation, so why you have to? And it yes, it can to a degree. Um, Still some challenges around accuracy, like we talk about hallucination. But I don't think AI is actually going to replace project managers. I think what it's going to do is put more pressure on project managers to be um, more of a project lead or project leader,
Mhm.
where the administrative side of dealing with day-to-day tasks, like generating reports, like updating PowerPoint slides, like all that administrative day-to-day job that we have, AI is going to help minimize the amount of time we spend those things. And in my opinion, is going to help us focus more on team. Because, as project managers, we manage time, scope, budget, right? Those are the three main areas, right? As as project leaders, we're more about working with our teams and helping create structure, helping develop our teams, you know, that side of things. So I think what AI is going to do is shift our focus from busy work that is still necessary to be done but it's going to shift it more towards project leadership, where we'll have to work with people that are still necessary to perform the tasks that project managers set for them. So I don't think we are going away. I don't think we're all going to be replaced by AI in next year or so. I think it's just going to shift um, our approach to work on day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't believe that AI will replace us completely, but it will definitely reshape our workload. And here, maybe it's my misconception or my fear comes to the place. If AI can take like most of our administrative work, so will we be expected to manage more projects simultaneously than we already do?
That is an interesting question. I believe so. I'm not certain about this, but if AI takes some of that burden and gives us more time on day-to-day basis, the companies who either utilize us in terms of more projects, or they will give us more complicated or complex projects with larger teams, right? So normally, intermediate project manager in normal companies expected to run between 2 to 3 projects at any given time, or maybe one large project, right? I think this is going to grow by at least 50%. I think we will, like, having 3 to 4 projects at any given time will be a norm, or 2 big projects, because the improvement in general productivity, and I'm calling it general productivity because it's like I said, it's that busy work that is going to be taken away from our hands.
Mhm.
But the responsibility for contract, you cannot sue AI, right? You sue companies. So someone still needs to take responsibility for the contract delivery. Let's say if you're a project manager in professional services. Um, Someone still needs to build the team and the environment in which team exists and operates, right? AI can provide all sorts of suggestions, but then when it comes to the actual implementation of those suggestions, you still need a project manager to lead that, right? So I think the workload is going to change, and the busy work is going maybe not go away, but it's going to be minimized, while we're going to gain more responsibilities in those areas that I just described.
Mhm. Makes sense to me. And probably my final question to wrap up this conversation is what do you think happened to project managers who resist adopting AI?
Hmm. Well, I think they don't have much of a future in today's world. Um, right now, a lot of people who have the kind of luxury and convenience of potentially not adopting them, because they can always say, well, my company doesn't allow us to use ChatGPT, so I'm not using any tool. I think it takes market a little bit of time to gain traction on those things. And in 2 to 5 years tops, the companies that utilize the AI tools of any kind, their productivity output is just going to go exponentially higher. And in companies that don't utilize those tools will be left behind. And you will neither have enough projects and work to be delivered such that your company can survive, or you're going to be too expensive. So then you'll price yourself out of the market, because other companies will be able to do it faster, cheaper, with less human resources. So their overall cost is going to go down. So they will be able to be more competitive on the market. And then, like 5 years from now, I don't know if it's going to be 5 years, but I'm just speculating here. Those project managers who were working for those companies that didn't allow you to use AI tools on daily basis are going to have a really steep learning curve, because they will already be competing with other project managers that did. And I think in 2 to 3 years, you're going to see, uh, on the job listings, proficient in AI tools as a prerequisite to get hired,
Mhm.
right? Remember, 10 years ago, People were putting like, you have to know how to use Word, Excel, Microsoft Project, and those kind of things. That was the prerequisite because that was the gain in productivity over everything else, right? I think AI tools are going to be that in the next couple of years.
Agreed. And thank you so much, Gerard, for this conversation. I'm excited to see you in our next episode related to AI agents. And everybody else, stay tuned.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the PMO Community Podcast for this enlightening discussion with Gerard Pietrykiewicz. A special thanks to our volunteers at the PMO Community Podcast for making this episode possible. Stay tuned for more captivating insights and interviews in our upcoming episodes. And don't forget to follow us on social media to stay updated. And if you find this episode valuable, please remember to like and share it. Feel free to reach out to me, Aina, live on LinkedIn with any questions or requests. And for all of the latest updates, make sure to follow us on our social media such as Podbean, YouTube, LinkedIn. Take care.